Let's date forever. Here's your weekly dose of relationship fuel with Sammi and Nathan Jaeger. Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're continuing our little mini-series around the fueled up life. So we're exploring the next tank, which is relationships and network.
But before we jump into it, let's quickly recap the 8 fuel tanks, if in case you've missed any episodes or you just want an overview of what we're talking about when we talk about a fueled up life. It's a really simple idea that there's 8 areas of your life that need intentional care and need fuel added. So the first one is your relationship with yourself.
The second one is your romantic relationship.
The third is relationships and network, and that's what we're going to dive into today.
So the fourth tank is your humming household.
The fifth is career and business.
The sixth one is wealth and lifestyle.
The seventh, the world and your contribution to it.
And the eighth tank, the final one, is the future.
So let's dive in. Relationships and network. What do we mean when we say this tank, Nath?
So this tank really covers a number of aspects, but fundamentally it accounts for everybody in your world that is not covered by your romantic relationship.
Your friends, your family, your peers, your colleagues, stakeholders.
Your barista.
The other people in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what Nath and I have learned is that no matter how amazing and wonderful our relationship is, we don't want a codependent relationship. We don't want a relationship where I'm heavily reliant on Nath for absolutely every need that I possibly have. And vice versa. I don't want the burden of being the one and only go-to person for Nath for everything in his life. And we've chatted to, a few hundred experts and couples now on this show. And so many of them have echoed this idea of the interdependent relationship where there's elements of independence and elements of working together to create a beautiful overlap where Nath has his life, I have my life, and right in the middle is what we share. So for this tank, relationships and network, there's some of the relationships that we share, but then there's the relationships that are uniquely Nathan's and uniquely mine.
So as our relationship has evolved, I think we've become really aware of what needs we want to be met within our romantic relationship, and then what needs we can basically go out to our wider network and what we really want our wider network to be able to support us with.
Yeah, and I think there's been times in our relationship where this tank's been really strong and other times where it's lacked. And you might know a couple like this who really do everything together, from like grocery shopping through to concerts, gigs, social activities,
exercise,
logistics.
You just never see them apart. Yeah,
and you might know couples who are like that, or couples who have a really small or sometimes non-existent network. They don't have a lot of friends. They don't have a lot of family around them. They don't have a good, strong support network. And it really is the two of them reliant on one another. And this tank for us is about avoiding that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's ensuring that the relationships around us are nourished, taken care of, prioritized, and we add fuel.
So in this episode, we're going to talk about what we do to keep our relationships and network fueled up. So one of the first aspects to that is that we've got our own friendships. So I've got a network of friends that are predominantly my friends, and then Sammy's got a network of her friends that are predominantly her friends as well.
So I think one of the ways that we really nourish this is huge advocates and supporters of each other, taking weekends away, guys' night, girls' night, whatever it is, for the other person to have time with their network, with their people. I don't know if we just did this instinctively, but we've always done this, even early on in our relationship. We would travel independently. I've traveled overseas on multiple trips, with just my girlfriends.
Yeah.
It's really common for me to take 1, 2, 3, 4 girls' trips in a year, even if that's just a weekend away with friends. And I love it when you do the same. And I think that's a really big part of us carving out intentional time, one-on-one time for those relationships.
Yeah. I think that time away really does help and to strengthen and deepen those relationships with the individuals. And it also brings things back to the relationship as well. Like, it's so great when you come back from a girls' weekend or even just a girls' night or something, and you do really bring some exciting and fun stories back to the relationship.
Yeah, because my friends do crazy shit. I love them. Yeah, I think also, I don't know, maybe you've had this experience, and I'm probably guilty of it, but like rolling up to girls' night or guys' night or your friendship circle, whoever that circle is made up of, and then there's that one person who like notoriously brings their partner. And it's like, ugh. It's like, it's not like there's anything wrong with their person. It's just that you really wanted intimate time with your friend, not your friend and their person. So I'm kind of wary of this because like you like my friends.
Yeah, I do.
And I quite like sharing you and you having your own relationships with my friends. But sometimes like I don't want you anywhere near them, and I want it to be a Nathan-free zone.
Yeah. So we have lots of friends interstate and overseas, and so we love going to visit them and for them to come visit us. So one of the things that we're really conscious of is that whoever is the primary relationship there, that we're really conscious that we make space for one-on-one time in that primary relationship, that we're not always spending time together as a foursome.
Yeah, we've talked a bit about this like in context of like weekends away and that sort of stuff. But I think even just at a like day-to-day, week-to-week kind of level, like I really do think that it's important for us each to have our own friendship and social interactions that are independent of one another. Like I love when we get to hang out in big groups and that sort of stuff too. But yeah, your network being your network is something that I think is really valuable for you and for our relationship and vice versa. Which kind of leads us to the next idea or concept of having a full relationships and network tank, is that the people that you're choosing to spend time with, those relationships are healthy, and that when you spend time with those people, you leave feeling full and not empty. Like you feel energized and revitalized, not drained and like, oh, that was like a chore to go and spend time with that person. Like I know that I'm in my early 30s now, and I've been through a few like friendship breakups. Some of them have been like messy, uncomfortable breakups where we just realized that the relationship wasn't serving each other anymore. But then I've also had friendships that have just kind of like faded out.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge advocate for being really conscious and intentional about your time. Like Sarah Knight wrote the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck. And in this book, she talks about this idea of a fuck budget, and that you've only got so many fucks you can give. And you kind of your fucks are your time, your money, and your energy. And where do you want to spend that time, money, and energy? And if you're really intentional about it, do you want to spend those fucks or that time, money, and energy on relationships that aren't serving you? And that's
filling
not
you up.
Yeah, not fueling you up. And that's not to say that like it's all about taking. Like I absolutely believe that relationships are about an exchange. But I know there's been times in my life where I've like done like an audit of like who am I spending time with? Who do I want to be spending time with? Who do I want to bring closer to me? Who do I want to put a bit more distance between? And who just shouldn't be there? Like because those interactions are not feeling good. And I'm not sure that that's like really a skill that we're ever taught. Like, you know, you go to school and like you start and like you have best friends and all that kind of thing. But navigating who you spend time with and the relationships that are meaningful, if you hold on to the bad ones, you really don't have space for the good ones.
No, you don't. I really love this idea that people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. When you think about it in that sort of sense, there are people that really do serve a purpose and is really great to have those friendships or those interactions with for a reason or even a season, but they don't need to be there for a lifetime. One of the examples for this is when we're on holidays. We really often meet people in backpackers and we have a really great time with them for a reason. But there's also been a few people that we've met at a backpackers and we just know that they're there for a lifetime.
Yeah, we do have a couple of really cool friends that we have spent such a small amount of time with IRL, like in each other's actual company. But yeah, they're important people in our lives and they've been there for a long time. Like, yeah, I think that's worth pointing out too, is that quality of friendship or depth of friendship or relationship is not necessarily equivalent to how much time is spent. I think a big part of this too is like that cliche thing of like you become the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. And if you really consider like if you want to emulate more of a certain trait or you want to develop a certain set of skills or you want to achieve something, like surrounding yourself with people who have already done that or are on their way to doing that, and, you know, have alignment of values and mission and all of those things.
Or will support you to do that.
Yeah, I think that's so important. You know, like hang out with 4 millionaires and you'll be the 5th. Hang out with 4 bodybuilders and you'll be the 5th. Like, like replace it with whatever you want, right? Yeah. But the idea of who you spend your time with, it matters.
Yeah, it does. It really does. So although friendships make up a huge part of this relationships and network tank, family makes up the other huge portion of this relationships and network tank. And sometimes family are your best friends and sometimes they're not. And families come in all different shapes and sizes. Some families are super close to each other and want to hang out every second day. Other families are a little bit more distant or a little bit more spread out and maybe not so close. And so one of the key things in this tank is really understanding what you want your relationship to look like with your family, but also understanding what your partner's relationship is to look like with their family and what your relationship is to their family as well.
Yeah, I remember this conversation coming up like while we were preparing to get married. And I think it was like one of the questions in our like pre-marriage questionnaire was like, how much time do you want to spend with your in-laws? And I don't think that's something that very many people talk about when they're entering a relationship. Like when you imagine your big life and your lifestyle, how often are you spending time with your family? Like, are you going to every cousin's wedding? Are you spending every Mother's Day, Father's Day, Easter, celebratory day with your family? Or do you have a different vision for your life? And is that in alignment with your partner, like, and what they really want? And then how do you navigate when those things overlap or when they clash? Like,
I think that this can be a really tricky topic to navigate because growing up as part of your family, you do just go along to all of these events, or maybe you don't. Maybe you've got a really small family and family events and things like that aren't a thing. And so when merging 2 lives together as part of a romantic relationship, it is one of those things that you're going to need to navigate, and you're going to need to understand, well, what is actually really important to me? Is going to every family event something that I want to do? Is spending lots of time together something that we really want to be doing?
Or have we got another model?
So for us, we don't live in the same state as our families. So by default, we can't spend every weekend with our families.
So I think a big part of keeping this element fueled up is understanding your own needs when it comes to quality time with family and then doing your best to meet them. But it's also about the boundary. Like it's like, what is the need, but also what is the antithesis of that? What is the opposite? What do I not need? What do I not want? And then having the same sort of clarity with your partner. And I think like we have friends in our world who hugely prioritize their family and others who don't have a big family or don't have deep family connections. I don't think there's either a right or a wrong by any means, but I think it's the absence of clarity or sometimes the understanding of where this piece sits in terms of values and importance. If that's not aligned, can cause a lot of tension. When one person in a couple really wants to go all in and go to all the things, and then the other one is like exhausted by being dragged to every auntie, uncle, cousin, birthday, christening thing, and then that like it's the misalignment of not being on the same page or a lack of willingness to go to those things independently as well, and having like my whole network move into your network or vice versa. Yeah, so for us, I think the biggest thing that we've done is when we moved interstate was we had a lot of conversations about what that was going to look like for us. What were the things that we would be willing to jump on a plane to be there for? And what were the things that we were just going to have to miss out on?
And this was definitely something that we had to test the waters with. So I know the first year that we moved interstate, we went back to visit family or friends or events and things like that. I think it was like 8 or 9 times in a year.
It was a lot.
And it was exhausting. So after that experience, we checked in with each other and realized that this wasn't a sustainable way of doing things. And so we redefined our values from there.
So another really big part of this fuel tank and keeping it full is understanding how other people are going to influence your relationship and what you will and won't allow. I kind of already touched on like boundaries and how important that is, but where is the line for the way that you let your friends, your family, your peers, other people influence your relationship? I think one of the most wonderful things about having hosted the Date Forever podcast for well over 100 episodes now is that we have heard the point of view and the lived experience from so many different people. And what works for them is not always what works for someone else. And yeah, I think there are some key pillars to what creates an awesome relationship, but I don't think they are rules. I don't think that there are like perfect ways of doing certain things. And I think this is something to be mindful of what are the thoughts, opinions, and ideas that you're willing to hear and attach weight to or attach value to. So what I mean by that is like everyone's always going to have an opinion about everything, right? About how you should be doing XYZ within your relationship, when you should get married, when you should get engaged, how you should have that wedding, when you should start trying for a baby, if you should start trying for a baby, how to have that baby, how to raise that baby, when to have the next baby, if you should or shouldn't buy that house, if you should or shouldn't buy that car, if you should or shouldn't XYZ ABC, whatever you want to fill in the blank with.
And like, sometimes that advice is
invited. Sometimes
absolutely.
It's not.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think part of having a really fueled up life and relationship is understanding what you're willing to take on board and what you take with a grain of salt, or what you leave on the shelf and that's not for you.
Yeah. And I think the boundaries conversation around friends and network and relationships also comes into spending of time. So, I mean, we touched on this before around family. But also, like, if you're getting ditched every second night or something for your partner to go hang out with their friends, is that actually affecting your relationship? And is that something you want or not want? And you might absolutely love that. You might love all your introvert time, or maybe it allows you to spend time with your friends as well. But maybe that's not something that you want in your relationship. So this is really just about defining those boundaries, working out what works and what doesn't work in regards to other people and other relationships, and being clear about those.
So the last part of having like a really fueled up relationships and network tank is having that strong support network of friends, family, peers to call on in times of celebration or commiseration. I don't think this was something we were great at in the beginning.
No, I think we just kind of had this by default a little bit. But definitely when we moved states, it was something that we really needed to consciously think about.
Yeah, and build.
Yeah.
I think this is about having people to ask. Like, if you need help, who do you ask? And I'm big on reciprocity. Like, I really believe in being very abundance-minded and giving first. Like, in our home, like, we have very few friends who haven't been to our house for a dinner party, who haven't slept on our couch, who we haven't helped move or house sat for, or taking care of one of their pets, or like, I think of us as very generous people. And I'm very much of the belief that that comes back to us in spades. So we really do have a very curated support network around us for when things don't go right or when unexpected things happen. But I think this is a big lesson in the ability to ask for help and be willing to receive that help.
And quite often that vulnerability around asking for something, it does build relationships too.
Yeah, and I think something that we often miss is that people actually love helping. So I want to echo what Nath said. I think a big part of having a support network around you is the willingness to be vulnerable and one, ask for help and be willing to receive it, but to also let people in the first place. Like we talk about like having people around to celebrate, like, well, they want to go along for the ride of like, what is it that you're working towards? What is it that you're celebrating? Is it like them coming along for the process of applying for a new job or buying a house or achieving any goal?
Yeah. Because I think if you haven't let somebody in to begin with, they might not realize the struggle or the effort or whatever that you've put into a certain thing to gain that success at the end.
Yeah, and in the same token, like it's really nice to have people to commiserate with when you've fallen flat on your face. Like
and you just want to have a vent or a whinge or
a cry or people to help pick you back up off the floor when you've done a belly flop. But again, I think that takes vulnerability to let people in and see the not so perfect parts.
Absolutely.
So, Nath, what would you say is like the number 1 or 2 things that you do to keep this relationship and network tank filled up yourself?
So the first one is probably echoing what you said earlier around having girls or guys trips separately. So the last couple of trips that I've taken have been mountain biking trips. And so I think having those opportunities to do things individually with my friends has allowed me to do some of those hobbies and activities and be around those people that really love doing those things and that really fuels them up too. And I think the other thing that's been really important, especially since we've moved into state, is just to continue to try and expand my network. Me being an introvert, friendships don't always come super easy for me. And it does take a little bit of effort for me to put myself out there and to gain new friendships. So one of the things that has really helped me is doing something like organized sport, where I'm forced to be around other people and they're forced to be around me, and to really try and build some of those friendships in a city where I don't have that core network right from childhood. So, Sammi, what are the top 2 things that you do to keep your relationships and networks fueled up?
So there's a few things that I do. I have a couple of group chats with my friends that I don't see in person regularly. And I'm big on sharing photos and videos and like the little micro moments of a lot of like my life. Like sometimes, I don't know, if like when you sit down with a friend who you haven't seen for ages and you talk about the big stuff, you're like, this happened and this happened. But sometimes life is really happening in the little things, like in the look at this cute new dress that I bought, or look how well my plant is growing, or look what I made for dinner, or share this beautiful beach day with me. Yeah. So I'm really big on regular micro kind of moments of communication. And that's not to say like I don't want my friends to be like giving me every update about every time they breathe or anything. And I'm not doing that. But I do feel like there's these moments of like, hey, this cool thing happened today or this week. This cool thing happened this week that I really want to share with you, or this was a real struggle for me this week. So big on those, keeping those circles connected, especially with my groups of friends who are friends with each other as well. Another thing that I do is I'm big on activating reasons to be together. Like I'm really big on creating opportunities for a dinner party or a get together or a brunch or a walk or a whatever the thing might be. Like I'm definitely proactive in creating opportunities. I'm on a really good rhythm at the moment with a couple of girlfriends. We're like probably like every 6 weeks or so, like we get together and we go on a date. Like we go and do something fun and intentional and it goes in the diary. And I love that. Like I really love those friendships and the way that we prioritize them because they are important and they do matter. So that's probably another thing that I do. And then the third thing is probably that relationship audit type thing. Like I wouldn't say this is not like a formal process or anything. It's not like I'm like, you know, running an annual peer review on my friendships or anything. But
doing
like
a Facebook cull. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've got like thousands of friends on Facebook. Some of them probably shouldn't be there. But I am quite intentional about who I want to spend my time with. And I lean into prioritizing those relationships that feel really good and that those friendships that challenge me and that want me to expand and that I have fun with and that are supportive and really add value to my life. Like I really am quite considered about that.
So friends and family is something that we can't avoid in life and is something that does really add value to our lives. So what I would urge is that you can do a little check-in with your relationships and network and see how this tank is feeling for you. And what can you do to give it a little more fuel? To say thank you for listening today, and in the light of relationships and network, we have provided access to a sport program for a month which teaches life skills to young adults. This program is based in India and is run by Dream a Dream and is possible via our partnership with Buy One Give One. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.